What is up, you guys? Naesam here, and in a recent video I mentioned that I was thinking about making a video going over like SimCraft and like the very basics, so you can learn how to figure out if a new piece you got or something, or if like a trinket is an upgrade. And people showed some interest, so this is that video, so hopefully you guys enjoy. So first things first, if you're not familiar with SimCraft, it is basically a program that simulates like a DPS rotation for World of Warcraft. It works for any DPS spec. I'm not sure, like, I know that Shadow Priest had issues in the past, but I don't think they do anymore. I think everything's kind of polished up for Legion right now. Most of the APLs are probably pretty good, except for like if you're looking at a spec that no one plays, like Frost Mage or something. I know the LE one is pretty good, since that's what most of my viewers are going to be interested in. But basically, that's like this is your best tool for finding upgrade stuff, or finding out if something is an upgrade, or finding out stat priorities. If you want to do any kind of theory crafting work, this is going to be what you want to have. So, to get it, you go to, wrong thing, you go to simulationcraft.org, click on downloads, and you can just click on the most like recent download here, or if you want like the most up-to-date at all times, you can go to Windows builds every few days here and download it from there. And just so you know, it does not upload automatically, or update automatically, so you have to come update here periodically. Every time something changes, you should come update it if you want to have accurate information. And they're also named after the patch. It's like this one's 7.10, 7.1. Previous one would be 7.03, I think, 7.03. So if you open up your SimCraft and it says like 7.03 up here, then you know it's out of date. But once you download it, I won't do it because I already have it. You can open it up, and it's going to welcome you here. You can either import your character by typing in the realm and stuff, or you can just download the add-on, which makes it a lot simpler because you don't have to relog every time you want to switch in a piece of gear. The add-on is on Curse. It's called, I think it's just called SimulationCraft or SimC. Type in SIMC in the chat, and it opens up this. This is basically like your character to SimC. It's all like the information for each item and everything. It's your professions for whatever reason. I think it's kind of outdated. Doesn't really matter anymore, but you can like copy and paste this, put it into the import tab. Where this import tab, you go to like simulate. This is a really outdated one that I'll go ahead and cover up. You can paste it here, and then you can just click on simulate. This might just like kill my computer because I'm recording and simulating at the same time, but yeah, that's why it's going very slow. But basically, it just simulates going over like 10,000 350-second fights of the action priority list, which is basically like a rotation, and it came up with 387,210 DPS. Here's like the damage breakdown. You can like scroll through, like this is the buff up times, stats. The stats, I have 32% crit, 35% haste, blah blah blah. Look at all the gear, make sure everything's right, and that's pretty simple, right? So if you want to change a piece of gear, you can either look up the item ID and the bonus ID for like the difficulty or socket or whatever, or you can use the add-on. You can like just switch the piece of gear. Like let's say I want to test out this set of gear versus this set of gear. Switch to my AoE set. Copy and paste it again. And then if you want to compare them directly, well, first thing, either you can just cover this up, simulate that, or if you want to compare them directly, you can put this in here again, like put both of them, change the name to like, let's say, well, I don't know why I got rid of the M there, Sham 2, and simulate again. Now it's going to simulate both, and it'll have them both on the screen, like showing all the information for both side by side. It helps a lot with like comparing. You can even do this with different classes if you want, but this is mostly useful for comparing different gear sets and seeing which one performs better. The more iterations, the more accurate or averaged out it's going to be. But anything over like 10,000 is just going to be overkill on your computer. So now we go to results, and it looks like the single target set, as expected, does more single target damage than my AoE set. Actually does significantly more, about 12,000 more DPS, just from replacing my Sifuza's Secret, putting on an 855 ring, and then putting on my legendary boots. It's that big of a difference. And you can like click on this, you can check it all out. Look at all the damage breakdown and stuff. So that's like the very basics of comparing gear sets. One other thing is that if you want to like add your own APL, this is going to be kind of an advanced thing, so I doubt any of you are going to want to do this. You basically just have to like import a sample profile and then just edit it and then copy and paste it. It makes it a lot easier. Like I changed mine to, because it used to be Frost Shock here instead of Earth Shock, I changed that, and then they ended up changing it later, so it's actually, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but if you want to edit the APL, that's the simple way of doing it, because I spent like hours trying to figure it out. So now that you know the very basics of comparing gear, I'm going to go over the settings and what I find to be the most effective. So first you go up here to options, then first you have globals, you can change the armory region or whatever you want. Change armory spec, blah blah blah, all the other useless stuff. If you have a really slow computer, you can change this to like 1000 and it'll still be pretty accurate. I just go with 10,000 because my computer can handle it. The length of time, if you want to like, you kind of want to average out like how long fights are lasting in the instance that's currently happening. The average for Emerald Nightmare is probably 4 to 5 minutes, I would say, for progression. And 5 minutes would be like 300 seconds, so this is actually probably too long. Is that 5 minutes? Yeah, that's 5 minutes. Okay. So 300 seconds is about what you want. And then fight style, for something like if you wanted to sim for like Ursoc, or a fight that requires like very minimal movement where you just kind of sit there and turret most of the time, you can do Patchwork, but I wouldn't suggest that since most fights are light movement. Or most fights are considered light movement, at least in my eyes. Over here you can change the number of enemies to whatever you want. I'm pretty sure the way they do this is they just have all the enemies like in one exact spot. So like Chain Lightning and Earthquake will all work on this. So it's not really something, I haven't really figured out how you can test like multi-dotting that's spread out. That's not really something I think you can really do very effectively with SimCraft. Unless you just change the APL and like took out Chain Lightning and stuff to make it like a single target APL. But that's not really something you have to worry about right now because there's no fights in Emerald Nightmare that are like that. And all this stuff doesn't really matter over here. Target level, like, this doesn't really matter anymore. Mostly what's important is this. And then after that, you can go to scaling. And this is where you get your stat priority from. So with scaling, you definitely don't want to turn on all stats because that would take like an hour to simulate. Because it has to like do all 10,000 iterations with all the different stats. And while we're doing this, I'm actually going to turn this down so I don't have to like edit out all the time. And for me being an Ellie Shaman, I put on Intellect, Crit, Haste, Mastery, and Versatility. Weapon DPS and all that other stuff does not matter at all. Spell power isn't really a thing anymore, it's kind of just with Intellect, so you don't really need to sim that, it's just a waste of time. And then make sure you hit the top thing, Enable Scaling. And then plots, you could do that as well, but unless you know how to read it, it's going to be kind of useless. You don't really need that information. It just kind of shows you like the scaling of each stat, which you'd think would be under scaling, but yeah. You can go back here, like this is my main one. I don't know where I put the other one. Actually, I think it was right here. So I guess let's see if we want to see the priorities for my AoE set and my single target sets on single target, see if they change at all. Unfortunately, you cannot side by side like more than one target, but I guess that doesn't really matter that much. So now it's scaling haste, scaling mastery. This is why I put it on 1000 iterations because it would have literally taken 10 times this duration. So somehow it went up because I changed the fight length, that's right. So now you click on this and you have this new information here. Apparently I need more crit. Good to know. And as you can see, this is like my current stat priority. My stat weights, intellect or agility or strength will always be 1 on the normalized value, and then everything else kind of fits around that. So right now crit is actually worth more to me than intellect is because I have so much haste and so much versatility compared to my crit right now. Yeah, and here it's saying that you want to run 10,000 iterations, but I just went with 1,000 for the sake of the video. So that's interesting, and I'd like to close this other stuff. What the heck? Okay. Close all this stuff. I don't want all this in my face. I want to be able to access the other thing, which is right down here, very quickly. And with this set, it's a little different because my Safuza Secret gives me so much crit that crit loses a lot of its value because I don't need it that bad anymore. And then versatility like is catching up and haste is catching up because I'm at about what the ratio is supposed to be with that set on. So then you can see the stat weights here. This is like where you get your actual like written out stat weights. This is like a pawn string. It generates all this stuff just for you very conveniently. But this is the most important information right here, is the normalized stat values or the scale factors, whichever one you prefer. And if you want to use pawn strings, you want to update this like every time you get a new piece because it's going to change. And keep in mind that equipping a new piece could change it and actually end up being a downgrade, so for the most part you just want to sim your pieces and see which one is better. So I think that kind of concludes all the relevant information, but one last thing I wanted to do for fun was to check my priest versus my shaman. And I'm pretty sure this is how they get their like DPS rankings. They just do it on patchwork. So I get rid of this, put in my priest, and I don't know if priest has been fixed in SimCraft because they had some issues with Surrender to Madness. But I guess it's worth a shot. It's probably gonna look for their stat weights as well, but I'd be interested to see my priest stat weights because they seem kind of wonky. So this is also a test if it's currently working for priest as well. And this will basically just compare like this character to this character. They don't have to be the same spec. You can probably put your whole raid team in there if you really wanted to. Well, I'm not sure if you used Surrender to Madness. It probably did. But my priest is actually pretty close to my shaman DPS, about 30k off at 20 less eye levels. But yeah, that's something else you can do that's kind of just fun to do. Yeah, priest stat weights are weird. Most stats are above intellect. I don't know if these stat weights are actually functional. Last I heard they weren't all that amazing. Or like they were a little buggy or whatever, but yeah, that's another thing you can do. It's kind of like a fun thing. So that basically concludes everything that anyone who is new to SimCraft or anyone who wasn't super familiar with it would need to know to use the basic things like finding stat weights and finding upgrades and stuff. So hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully that helps with your issues with LE stat weights being so weird and wonky and upgrades being so confusing and stuff. This is pretty straightforward. So thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Like if you liked it, all that other stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.